because I've described the gluten syndrome from my patients, and they have tummy trouble, they have brain trouble, and they have skin trouble. It all began in the bath. This is Elisabeth. And I've got her permission as well to use her bath photo. And when this photo was taken, no one even knew about gluten. This was 28 years ago. People didn't know what gluten was. I certainly didn't look out for it. But when she was a bit older, when she was 6 and I met her when she was 7, she came to my clinic after seeing 3 other paediatricians with gastric reflux, sore tummy, bloating, and she was completely miserable. She didn't have any friends, she smelled of acid, she was off school a lot. Look at her, just so thin. And each paediatrician that saw her said, you have got celiac disease, and they each did an endoscopy, and I did an endoscopy, and they were all negative for celiac. This was in the year 1989. And this was the first time that the Innova Diagnostics was putting out gluten-gliadin antibody tests. And she had a high test, and she was one of the first patients in my hospital that I tested with the gliadin antibody. And I talked to my colleagues and I said, look, we've got this abnormal gluten test, 3 normal endoscopies, a sick, miserable child who 3 paediatricians, including myself, thought had celiac disease. I'm going to put her on a gluten-free diet. It took me 9 months to pick up the courage to put her gluten-free because we didn't do gluten-free on non-celiacs in 1989. And 9 months later, she went gluten-free, and 3 weeks after that, her mother came back to my clinic with Elisabeth smiling for the first time and saying, Dr. Ford, it's a miracle. She's a new girl. I said, wow. And then I wrote in my book, in my notes, at last we are getting somewhere. And she stayed gluten-free. And she was terrific. And then she went to another paediatrician in another county in the North Island. And the paediatrician must have rolled his eyes, looked at my notes, and said, she doesn't have celiac disease, go back on gluten. And so she did, because mother is very compliant. And Elisabeth got really sick and went back on a gluten-free diet after about 6 months. And she's been gluten-free ever since. And now there she is, beautiful, 28, gets gut trouble with gluten still, and is looking after special needs children in London. She is the longest gluten-free survivor that I have in my clinic. But she was a lesson to me. I didn't quite know where to go from here because I had already gone to the dark side. So let's wind the clock back up to this year, and here's Arabella. She came to see me, and now I do blood tests on every single person that comes from my clinic because, just as Stephen Wangan says, you can't tell who's got celiac disease. You can't tell who's got a gluten problem. You don't know until you test them. For goodness me, test, test, test. When people come to see me, I say, I test and do, don't wait and see. So we tested Arabella for all the allergy stuff. She's just got eczema, a bit of a pot tummy. She's got celiac disease, goodness me. High TTG, she's got the gene, she's got the high gliadin antibody, she had a positive endoscopy, went gluten-free, her eczema's gone. If she'd gone to a dermatologist, she wouldn't have ever had a blood test. She would have never have gone to a GI doctor because she doesn't have GI symptoms. You know that most celiac people, did you hear what I said? Celiac people, not celiac disease people, because celiac disease is not a disease. It shouldn't be ever called a disease. It is not a disease. It is a condition that some people have, and when they go gluten-free, they're over it. We are not diseased. Okay? So she had blood tests because I blood test everybody. Just like Stephen Wangan said, there's so many medical practitioners who refuse to do the test when you ask them to do it because they say you haven't got celiac disease, you're not near sick enough. And people who come to my clinic come because they want some help solving a problem. They don't come for endoscopy. They want help. But my medical colleagues say that I'm so powerful that patients leave me and they get better because of placebo. And I wish. So I'd like to show you a non-placebo result. This is a little short guy called Matthew. He's got gluten syndrome. He has the gene for celiac disease, DQ2, DQA. He doesn't have the celiac antibodies. He's got a high gluten antibodies and he's short. And there he is 7 years later. He was at the White Dot when I saw him. And every year I've seen him, he's been gluten-free. And look where he is now. Where the red arrow is. If we hadn't put him gluten-free, and you can see that every year he's grown a little bit more in his centiles, if he hadn't been gluten-free, he would have been shorter, and he would have been there, where that red dot is. Gluten interferes with growth hormone receptors, whether or not you've got celiac disease. The shortness in children is not due to nutritional and mineral deficiency. It is due to the growth hormone not working very well when gluten interferes with the receptor sites of growth hormone. And the trick is with this gluten stuff is that there is no gluten symptom. There is no gluten symptom. Anything can be made from gluten. The symptoms are making you feel unwell. There is no classic celiac disease any longer, or there shouldn't be. So we're not going to find it. And the whole idea of the gut only being a problem was because celiac disease was thought of as a gastrointestinal disease, so no one looked for any other type of symptoms.